All right, so let's talk about probably the biggest debate in the programming community, which is the topic of which language is the best language out there. And depending on who you talk to, some people might say it's Python, others might say it's Java, others might say it's C, other people might say it's JavaScript, and the list goes on, okay? So what are my thoughts on the best programming language out there? See, in my opinion, the best programming language depends on the task you're trying to accomplish, because every single one of these programming languages has its own strengths and weaknesses. And depending on your project, one programming language will be much better than another programming language. See, the way I see it, programming languages are kind of like tools, okay? You use your tools to achieve some type of solution. And not all tools are created equal. Just because one tool is great at doing something, it doesn't mean it's the best in all situations. For example, let's say you're trying to cut down a tree so they can use the wood to make some fire, for example, okay? I could give you 3 different tools to do this job. You could either use a knife, you can use a hammer, or you can use a chainsaw. Of course, using a chainsaw will probably be the fastest and most efficient way to bring down that tree. But it doesn't necessarily mean the chainsaw is the best in all situations. Because if I wanted to nail something to a wall, a chainsaw will be pretty much useless to me. I'll be better off using a hammer for that job. In a similar way, when you're programming, different languages will be better than other languages in specific situations. So, for example, if you wanted to develop an artificial intelligence solution, Python probably might be the best programming language for that scenario. If you want to design an interactive web page, JavaScript might be best for that. If you want to develop something that is very fast and efficient, like a game, C# will probably be the programming language to choose. Or if you wanted to develop some general purpose business application, then maybe you should look into Java. Say with developing an Android application, you can either use Java or Kotlin. And for iOS, Swift is the programming language that you should probably choose. So as you can see, depending on what you're trying to build or the type of problem you're trying to solve, the best programming language will be completely different. So instead of asking yourself, what is the overall best programming language? You should be asking, what is the best programming language for this project that I'm trying to build? So usually this question of what is the best programming language comes from people who are first starting to learn programming, and they don't want to invest too much time in learning one programming language only to later find out that maybe another programming language is better than the one that they started learning with. And it's an understandable concern. You don't want to invest too much time in something only later to have to switch to something else and then learn it all over again. But keep in mind that once you learn one programming language, it's very easy to transition to another programming language. So it doesn't really matter which programming language you start with, because once you learn the fundamentals and the concepts with one programming language, learning another programming language only takes a fraction of the time, probably 5% of the time that you use to learn that first programming language. Imagine learning how to program is like learning how to drive. And the car you choose is like the programming language you choose, okay? Just because you learn how to drive with a specific car doesn't mean that once you've learned how to drive, you're going to have to learn how to drive from scratch again once you change your car, once you get a new car. As long as you know the fundamentals of driving, like the rules of the road, how to move your car, how to park, and all those fundamentals. It doesn't really matter which car you choose. Once you switch to a new car, you don't have to learn to drive from the beginning again, okay? As a matter of fact, the more different types of cars you drive, the more you realize that most cars fundamentally operate the same way. It's just the little details that are different, but fundamentally, they're all the same, just like programming languages. It's just the syntax that is different, but fundamentally, the concepts are all the same. So I say all that to say, don't stress too much about identifying the best programming language before you start learning to program. Just know that regardless of whatever programming language you start with, you can easily transition into a new programming language when you determine that maybe that programming language is not the best for the type of project or task you're trying to accomplish. And don't let anyone tell you that there is one single best programming language, because it all depends on the type of task you're trying to accomplish.